Good morning to everybody. Um, we will continue with our discussion. Last part of the discussion, we concluded with problem of suicide and Buddhist attitude to it, and then today I will be looking at some more aspects of that. Just to refresh your memory, we discussed euthanasia and also suicide, looked at what could be the Buddhist response for these phenomena. Now, we looked at different aspects of euthanasia. Basically, euthanasia, which is considered to be also called mercy killing, the difference is suicide, you kill yourself. And then in euthanasia, actually it is done by somebody else. So basically the concept of euthanasia or mercy killing is not acceptable to Buddhism, because very basic thing is it involves killing somebody. So there must be a intention to kill. The person has the intention and then he does something, or negatively does not do that something that has to be done, either negatively or positively. Positively means either giving some kind of lethal, that means causing death, some injection or some medicine, something you do. That is considered to be positive. Negative thing is to remove the, for example, feeding tube. Now that could cause death. Maybe not immediately, but And then, however, there is interesting, very subtle difference. Now, in a situation, patient asks the doctor to do something, give him or her an injection, or give some medicine to die. Now, if the doctor provides the medicine, but the patient takes it and drink it, or himself give the injection to himself, now then that is not considered to be euthanasia, because it is a suicide, but it is what we call assisted suicide. But between the two things is very slim difference, because somebody giving the advice and how much to take this poison and things like that. All these things can be said to somebody, but that still is assisted suicide. But euthanasia is really doctor gives it, doctor administers it. Now, but you can see that the difference is very slim actually when patient requests to do that. However, euthanasia, particularly as understood as mercy killing, is really even without the knowledge of the patient. Now, in other words, you take the responsibility of that life into your hands, and then you make a decision to terminate that life. That is really the euthanasia, and then that is kind of involuntary euthanasia. And in the legal system, of course, it is not accepted. Now, why it is not accepted? Because you are killing a person. Now, there can be many arguments. Some say that life is useless. And then also somebody can say, it is a very acute, very bad pain. So you must relieve the person from the pain. But again, there are arguments to the other side. When somebody is undergoing very bad pain, why do you feel uncomfortable about it? Now, very often it so happens that you feel uncomfortable about it because the patient may be your near relation, mother, father, or somebody like that. But then psychologically it is very interesting. Usually you will not feel that bad when you see somebody else is suffering. But you will feel bad when you see your own mother or father suffering. Now, that shows that there is why you cannot bear it, because it is your mother, your father. So, your connection. In other words, you are not able to bear that pain. But that can be your problem. If you can't bear that pain, it is not the problem of the patient who is undergoing pain, but it is your problem. So if you can't bear it, is it the answer is the terminating that life? Maybe not necessarily, right? Because I feel bad, so bad when my mother is, suffering. But then what is the right I have to terminate her life? Although I think that, it could be, as I suggested in my previous discussion, it could be what is called a vanchaka dharma. Like you are deceiving yourself. You think that you do it out of compassion for your mother. But actually what you have is, in the guise of compassion, your own love towards yourself, because you don't want to undergo that pain. So, something like that. Can somebody put this? So you can see that there are different aspects. And also the attitude towards pain. Now, in Buddhist meditation, we have Vedananupassana, right? Reflecting on pain. Now, Vedananupassana means when you have some type of, the Vedana, you reflect on that. In other words, Vedana can be really a good thing. Okay, in this case, it is not a pleasurable Vedana, clearly. It is very painful, acute pain, but still through pain, you can learn something about your life. Now, you remember we had cases like Godhika, who committed suicide. But that type of suicide is a very painful, also time taking, because maybe he cut his throat. So the nerves are cut and then bleed. So the person doesn't die immediately by bleeding, so it takes some time. But luckily for Godhika, he attained Arahanthood. Now similarly, Channa. So both these cases, you know that they committed suicide, but the termination of life does not come immediately. It takes some time. So within that time period, maybe 15, 20 minutes, so whatever, the person attained Arahanthood. Now, interestingly, we don't, as a result, there is no Vinaya rule against suicide, clear Vinaya rule. Now, Godhika or Channa, although they committed suicide, they became Arahant. But that doesn't mean that you should commit suicide, because everybody who will be committing suicide in that manner will not end up in attaining Arahant. Then what? Your last thought moment is is not a good thought moment, and then there's a good possibility that you will be born in a bad place. But then the strange thing is there is no clear rule against committing suicide. We had this case, Bhikkave Attanang Pate Tabbang. But that literally means that don't make yourself fall down. According to the story, actually he cast himself off from the cliff. later literature, Milinda Panya and also commentary interpret this pateti, na patetabang to mean commit suicide. Okay? But it is ambiguous because basically pateti means make yourself fall, casting yourself off. Now in this particular case, this monk jumped off from the cliff of the mountain. So Buddha says, don't make yourself cast off, but doesn't clearly use the term killing yourself. So some people interpret this to be Vinaya rule against suicide. Some people simply say, no, it is not a Vinaya rule against suicide. So there is a debate, but because it also connects with you know, the killing and killing yourself. So it really causes a Vinaya issue. Okay? But even if we understand Bhikkhave Attanang Pate Tabbang as rule against suicide, suicide is a fairly minor offense. Okay? But the problematic thing is in the Parajika we know that somebody who assisted suicide becomes guilty of Parajika. But what about the person who commits suicide? You know, it remains open. It remains open because, but a person who praises death incites somebody to die, that means incites someone for suicide, is guilty of Parajika. But the person who commits suicide is, I mean, we don't have anything about it. He is not guilty of Parajika according to the Vinaya rule. So in the Vinaya there is, you can see some kind of ambiguity here. Okay? Some kind of ambiguity. But basically when we look from overall philosophy of Buddhism, we can say that Buddhism doesn't approve suicide because to receive a human life or to be born as a human being according to Buddhism is very rare thing. So to be born as a human being is such a rare thing. So if you terminate your life, if you kill yourself for some reason, unimportant reason, you know, it is really a wastage. And also you are causing suffering to other people. If you commit suicide, it could be, you know, the causing suffering to the others. If you are a teacher, it should be a problem for your students. If you are a student, for your teacher, or if you are for your parents, like that, you know, it could be causing. And also, overall philosophy of life in Buddhism shows that either you must not prolong your life unnecessarily, or you must not abruptly terminate it. Both are wrong. Sometimes, you know, according to the modern medical equipments and medical knowledge, we can keep a body going on, but completely useless. For the person, you know, may be unconscious, okay? But we can keep the body going on. But we can say that according to Buddhism, that also is not correct. But on the other hand, normal life that can be lived should not be also terminated. So in one end you have suicide. The other end you have prolonging life completely unnecessarily. So we can say that, you know, both are wrong according to Buddhism. Both represent two different perspectives of life. Either you terminate it abruptly because you have some psychological problem, But suicide is not the answer according to Buddhism. If you have Vedana, you must face Vedana. If you have any other thing, you should. But then, so you can see that depending on the overall philosophy of life in Buddhism, neither suicide nor prolonging life, are, neither is approved. So, Buddhist position, we have to think based on these things, because there is no direct prohibition against it, as I understand. But still we can say that according to Buddhism, suicide is not permissible. Okay. Now, Godika's case was, he was able to get this Cheto Vimutti, liberation of mind, but Samayikam. Samayika means time restricted. That means temporary. So the moment he gets, he can't retain it. So out of frustration, he commits suicide. But that shows that Venerable Godika is not an ordinary person. He is a very developed person. He gets this Cheto Vimutti, but he can't retain it. So maybe he thought that, the moment you get the Cheto Vimutti, you commit suicide and then die with that Cheto Vimutti. Maybe that was the position. That was what was in his mind. Somehow or other, luckily for him, he could attain Arahanthood in the process. Maybe because that shows that he is a developed mind. But we cannot expect that to happen for everybody. Okay. So you can see that on the one hand we have euthanasia, someone making a decision on somebody else's life, or suicide, you making your own decision about your own life, under certain circumstances. However, today I would like to look at this phenomenon of self-sacrifice. Now, self-sacrifice is also, ultimately you are giving your life. You are letting yourself die, or you kill yourself. Now, what is the difference between self-sacrifice and suicide? Because you can see that self-sacrifice is accepted, but then isn't it also suicide? Now, if suicide is accepted, then in the form of self-sacrifice, then doesn't it mean that certain type of suicide is accepted in Buddhism? Because, you can't say that, any type of suicide, because if you look at the self-sacrifice. Now, there are instances in the Jataka stories and also in the Mahayana literature in which the Bodhisattva and some other individuals sacrificing themselves, their lives, for a greater cause. Sasajataka in the Jataka and Vyagrihi Jataka in the Jataka Mala are examples of the Bodhisattva sacrificing his life for the sake of others. The Buddhist concept of paramita, perfection, has the concept of self-sacrifice imbibed into it as the highest degree of perfection, paramatha paramita. Altruism in the highest sense seems approved in Buddhism. However, discourses such as Ambalattika Rahulovada Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya seem to place both oneself and the other on par in ethical considerations. Now, these are some of the things we can think about when we talk about self-sacrifice. Now, self-sacrifice is considered to be a great thing. Now, but ultimately in the self-sacrifice, what happens is You allow yourself to be killed. You allow yourself to die, or you kill yourself. Now, whether this is right or wrong, although we use the word self-sacrifice and we don't use the word suicide, actually it's a kind of suicide, right? You are making a decision to terminate your life. Now, if suicide is wrong, what is the situation of self-sacrifice? Now, for example, in the Jataka stories and also in the Mahayana literature, you find this. In the Theravada Jataka story, Jataka, we have Sasa Jataka, where the Bodhisattva was born as a rabbit, and then Bodhisattva jumps into the fire. Of course, you know what happens when you jump into the fire. But then the story is very interesting. The king of gods appear, and then he saves the rabbit. So actually the rabbit doesn't die. But although rabbit doesn't die, we can say on the one hand, okay, the act of self-sacrifice was not complete, because a rabbit really did not die. But on the other hand, on the part of the rabbit, the Bodhisattva, he sacrificed his life, right? Because he really did that act, but it could not be, he could not complete it. But psychologically, he did that. Now, if we forget about the fact that the rabbit did not die, we can take this as a case of self-sacrifice. Now, Jataka's story says that this is a good thing to do. It is interesting for us to think, is this really the Buddhist position? Or are there several Buddhist positions? Or are there some instances when suicide or self-sacrifice is accepted? Can you see it? How are we going to really decide on this? Now, based on Sasa Jataka, can we conclude that ultimately, yes, certain forms of suicide is okay? Now, again, think about the fact that Buddha did not have a Vinaya rule against suicide. Now, if you take Sasa Jataka, but then sometimes scholars say that what is in the Jataka stories are not really the Buddhist philosophy. Those are really, some people say that, the folk tales you took from Indian society and absorbed into Buddhism. So what is in the Jataka are sometimes considered to be not the exact Buddhist philosophy. So that observation is also there. But if we forget these things, we can see that Sasa Jataka is a case where the Bodhisattva sacrifices the life. And also along with that, you can take the idea Paramartha Paramita, this concept of Paramartha Paramita. Now, Paramita is perfections in order to attain Buddhahood. Paramita, Upaparamita and Paramartha Paramita. This concept of Paramartha Paramita in Buddhism is to practice the perfections even putting your life at risk. Okay? I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that sacrificing your life or killing yourself. But if your life is lost, that is accepted. You know that when you practice paramita in that degree, your life could be lost. But it doesn't matter. The distinction is this. In the course of practicing the paramita in that degree, maybe your life is not lost, but you are ready to that. In psychologically, you have made up your mind that it is okay if my life is lost. So that is the Paramattha Paramita. So in Paramattha, you really don't take your life to be determining factor. Let your life go. You sacrifice your life. Whether it happens actually or not is something different, okay? Now, Jatakamala, we also have the Vyagri Jataka. Starving female tiger with her cubs, starving. And then the Bodhisattva jumping into, becoming the food for the starving tigress. This story. Now, if we take these stories, you can see that the concept of self-sacrifice, or in other words, we can say that the suicide in the form of self-sacrifice. Suicide in the form of self-sacrifice. We usually don't associate this word suicide with self-sacrifice, but actually in self-sacrifice, if it really happens, then it's a form of suicide. Now, the question is whether this is approved. Okay. Now, the Buddhist, the Theravada Buddhist position, now if you take Sasajataka, the story of Sasajataka, although it did not end with death, Sasajataka indicates that, the sacrificing your life is acceptable, okay? Sacrificing your life is acceptable. So, in that sense, can we say that suicide in the form of self-sacrifice is accepted in Buddhism? Now, if you take Mahayana Buddhism, we can see that it's clearly sacrifice is accepted. And we know if you take some instances in Mahayana literature and also Mahayana Buddhist practice, self-sacrifice is very much there. Now, in recent history, in 1960s, I think some of you know that in Vietnam, the Buddhist monk, Quan Duc, burned himself to death. Right? Of course, he sacrificed his life. Now, 1960s, about 50, 60 years ago, the political situation in Vietnam was, the people perceived to be very bad. And then it was really detrimental to Buddhism and the Buddhist practice. And there were many wrong things. So, in order to protest, in order to raise the awareness against what is happening in the country, this venerable monk committed suicide. Now, some of you may have seen this in still it is available in the, you can Google and see it. It became a real huge ceremony. This monk came to Saigon city and he sat on the middle of the road, and there were thousands of monks, nuns and ordinary Buddhists and others watching this. Now, you see that usually if somebody is trying to commit suicide, people stop it, right? That is the usual reaction. You don't allow someone to commit suicide. But this was a totally different thing. This Buddhist monk is seated in the middle of the road. All the others are gathered around. and then they were chanting Buddhist discourses. So, it became a big ceremony. And then one person put, the gasoline on his body, and then this person lighted after putting gasoline. Now you can say that it is not a suicide because somebody else lighted him. So we can say in a way it is kind of euthanasia, but it can't be described as euthanasia. Euthanasia is usually done in order to relieve somebody from pain. Now here there is no pain involved. He was in perfect health. But this was a self-sacrifice, right? So although technically it is not a suicide, it is almost suicide, or you sacrifice your life. You see the technical point, because strictly speaking you can't say it is suicide. But on the other hand, you are sacrificing your life. And then, so somebody lit him, and then, completely the whole body burned. Now what is this? Actually in if you look at the Theravada and Mahayana traditions, we can see that in the Theravada tradition, this actual dying instances are rare. In the Sasajataka, the rabbit doesn't die. And also in the Buddhist tradition, such instances are not encouraged. But in the Mahayana tradition, it is different. Now this Vietnam incident is a Mahayana tradition. And also there were, and before and after, incidents where Vietnam itself, some monks, some nuns, for example, cut off their hand in opposition to what was going on in the country. Now they cut off their hand in the presence of the Buddha statue. So it was considered to be some kind of religious thing. Now you see, in other words, associated with Buddhist practice, kind of self-torture, like burning your finger to repent some kind of wrong thing you did. You see, this physical pain, inducing physical pain, is basically a Mahayana Buddhist concept. We don't find it in the Theravada very much. Now you also know that in what is considered to be the Bodhisattva initiation, when you become really accept the Bodhisattva vows, this happens usually again in a very festive occasion, religious occasion, where your head is burned with incense sticks. But of course, again it happens when, others are chanting and, it is a public event. But ultimately, your head, you can see in the Mahayana monks and nuns, 3 dots finally, the left on your head, because, it is raw flesh is burnt with. Now, this is a physical inflicting pain, ultimately leading to self-sacrifice, sacrificing your whole life. I think this is an important issue for us to think when we look at ethically. Now, although we talk about Buddhism in one sense, but within Buddhist traditions, you can see that there are certain different emphases. So think about it. It looks like Theravada Buddhist tradition, we do not have this kind of burning your finger or inducing physical pain as a part of religion. But on the other hand, in the Mahayana, you have, ultimately leading to self-sacrifice. But before that, there are other instances, where you burn your body, burn the parts of your body, and physical type of inducement of pain. it is a very interesting phenomenon, different cultures. Now, sometimes I have seen in the Mahayana Buddhist practice, people say, for example, some monks, they undertake to do, like say for walking X number of miles for 1 year every day. So that is a part of religious observance. But at the same time, you can see there is some kind of physical aspect there. And then in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, you see they do this form of worshipping. Actually, it is not very easy. Now, for the person who is not trained to do that, for example, a Theravada Buddhist monk or nun will not be able to do it more than 3 or 4 times, perhaps. But there are people who do it for 100 times. Like even more than that. Now, you see in those things, you see a physical aspect, kind of giving pain to your physical body. In the Theravada tradition, it doesn't seem that we have that aspect, right? Because in a way, certain things are not really torturing your body, but they come to the taming your body, punishing your body, doing physically things. Of course, we do have a meditation and walking meditation, but these are not instances of walking meditation really. Someone who is climbing some sacred mountain every day is not really necessarily a form of meditation, but it has this physical aspect. So the question I am raising here is this: do we see some kind of difference here, difference in emphasis? So we have self-sacrifice, but then along with self-sacrifice, certain things much less in the degree, like you can say inducing pain to body, or you can say inflicting pain to body. So the self-sacrifice is where you completely let yourself die, or you kill yourself. But then inducing pain can be different degrees of pain. Now, how are we going to really explain this according to the Dhamma? Now, for example, in the Buddha's life, we know that discourses say that he practiced austerities for a long time. Now, if you look at a discourse like Bhairava Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, Buddha gives a detailed description of the kind of austerities he followed. And of course, really, it is really torturing your body. But having done it for a substantial period of time, Buddha came out with that, saying that it is useless. The words he used in the first Dhamma sermon, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, on Atthakilapatthana Yoga is Dukkho Anariyo Anatta Sanghito. It is painful, Dukkho. Anariyo, it is not noble. Anatta Sanghito, it leads to wrong things. Anatta. So you see the point where Buddha practiced it, and then finally he concluded that it is only painful, but it doesn't serve a purpose. Anatta Sanghito. It really serves a wrong purpose. So Buddha asked disciples not to do that. Now, consequently, in the Buddhist tradition, we do not have Atthakilamathana Yoga. But if you take the different Buddhist traditions, Theravada, Mahayana and Vajrayana, you can see that in the 3 traditions, it seems that aspects, the approach is a little bit different. Now, in the Tibetan tradition, you have these forms of worship. It is not very easy to do. It's physically, you have to be really a trained and fit person to do that. So now similar thing we don't have in the Theravada. And also, I think I mentioned this last time also, now in the certain Tibetan traditions, when you are really old, the monks go into a seclusion. They go into a covered place. Nobody can see him. And idea is that he will not come out from that. He will be dying there. And it's completely covered place where only you have small, the outlet where you can keep the food and rotate it and the food goes inside and then you use it again, you rotate it the other side. So that kind of mechanism is there, but nobody sees the person. If that food kept there was not taken for 3-4 days, then you know that the person is dead. Now, again, in the Theravada tradition, we don't have that type of practice, right? Where when you go into that, that is to starve yourself. Some people take the food, some people don't take the food, but the idea is that you don't come out. Whether you become ill or whatever, you don't come out, you don't take any medicine after that. Now, these are forms of terminating life. In a way, some type of suicide. So what I'm trying to show you is, here you can see different approaches within the 3 Buddhist traditions. Okay? So in the Theravada tradition looks at in a certain manner, and then the Mahayana and Vajrayana seem to be accepting, the certain form of physical punishment or physical disciplining, which is not found in the Theravada tradition. So anyhow, important question is, when it comes to at least self-sacrifice, can you sacrifice your life, terminate your life, let yourself die, or you kill yourself for some kind of higher purpose? Now, looking at the Jataka stories, we have to conclude that, yes, Paramattha Paramita is a good example. In the practice of Paramita, in the Paramattha degree, you can say that if death occurs, it's okay. Okay. Now, important thing is, in the Theravada tradition, we don't have instances where actual death has taken place. So in the practice, but in principle, in theory, we can say that yes, it is accepted. Okay. Now, so the Paramita thing. Now, although in the Paramitas you have this, altruism in the highest sense seems approved in Buddhism. What is altruism? Altruism is concern for others. Altruism simply means concern for others. I mean, giving preference to the welfare of the other over your own welfare. In other words, in altruism, you put your life into the second place, you give the primary place to the other person's life. In other words, you are dedicated to serve others. However, the ultimate degree of altruism is to let your life go, sacrifice your life, because ultimately that is what what you mean by altruistic practice. However, discourses such as Ambalattika Rahulovada Sutta Majjhima Nikaya seem to place both oneself and other on par in ethical considerations. Now, what is the Buddha's attitude to it? Now, as I said, 3 Buddhist traditions seem to be looking at this same phenomenon in a somewhat different manner. Particularly, Vajrayana and Mahayana seem to be, accepting some sort of physical sacrifice, in the sense physically you die. But then Theravada doesn't seem to be so. Now, if we look at some discourses like Ambalattika Rahulovada Sutta, it seems to be giving answer to this question. But we will need to look at the statement quite carefully. So in the Ambalatika Rahulavada Sutta, Buddha says, what is the right thing to do? The criterion given was something neva attabhyaba daya na parabhyabadaya na ubhyabhyabadaya. So here you have atta, para and ubhaya. Neva attabhyabadaya, na parabhyabadaya, na ubhyabhyabadaya. Buddha says that you should do something if it doesn't cause pain and suffering for yourself, if it doesn't cause pain and suffering for the other, if it doesn't cause pain and suffering for both. Now, when you have atta, para and ubhaya, now what is the meaning of having ubhaya, both? When you have atta and para, you have neva attabhyabadaya, ne parabhyabadaya, then you have atta and para together. Now, what is the meaning of having atta and para together? Because you have atta, so you should not do something if it causes harm to you. And also you should not do something if it causes harm to other. But then, why ubhaya? I think this addition of ubhaya, it may look like redundant. It may look like unnecessary. Because you have atta, you have para, then why do you have to have ubhaya, both together? Looks like unnecessary, but actually, if you think carefully, it's not unnecessary. It gives a very important meaning to it. So, you should not do something if it causes harm to yourself and the other, the recipient. So, if something causes harm to you, you can say it is not good. But on the other hand, you have to see if same thing could be not causing harm to the other, then what should you do? When you take ubhaya, it is very important. Both atta and para are taken in equal terms. So in other words, you not only look at yourself, you also look at other. So ultimately what you should do has to be not causing pain or suffering both yourself and the other. Now if you take altruism would say, don't look at atta or don't look at ubhaya, only look at para. If something is causing harm to other person, altruism says don't do that. But here Buddha says that if something causes harm to you, don't do it. I mean, if it affects only you, then you can see number one. But if almost always we know that para is also involved, so you can say that neva parabhyabadaya. You should not do something if it causes the other. But how about something you do which causes harm to you but doesn't cause harm to the other person? Or it serves for the welfare of the other person, but not for you. What should we do? Again, answer depends on what kind of thing are we talking about. Suppose, the other person is more hungry than me, then I will skip eating and I will give my meal to the other person. Then in a simple manner you can say it's not a big deal, but of course in a simple manner you can say it is not good for you. It causes pain to you, but of course it causes happiness to the other person. So you make a sacrifice. You sacrifice your meal and then you give the meal to the other person. Like, there can be situations where you can justify you undergoing some kind of material loss but helping the other person. Okay? So there you can say that some action can be painful to you, harmful to you in a manner, but it is good for the other person. So maybe you do that, okay? Like armies or material thing. But the important thing is this, if you look at this whole thing from a more different point of view, ethical point of view, for example, can you do something harming yourself morally, but try to help the other person? Can you do something like that? You are harming yourself morally, but then you try to help the other person. Now I will give you an example again from Mahayana literature. In the Mahayana tradition, you have this belief that a bodhisattva can do certain wrong things in order to help others. For example, bodhisattva will go to a group of drinking people, alcohol, and then bodhisattva himself get into that crowd and drinks. But the idea is that in the course of doing that, bodhisattva to get those people into the good path. Same way we have stories about bodhisattva goes to a prostitute, and then having a relationship with her, but in the course of that, in order to get the prostitute into the right path. Now if you look at these two incidents, you can see that bodhisattva is in a way harming yourself. Because if you, in order to get the drinking people to the right path, you become a drinker. In order to get the prostitute to the right path, you go and associate the prostitute. Now, both these incidents, we can say that it is harming yourself morally, not materially, as my earlier example. So, in the Mahayana literature, they say that you can do that. Bodhisattva can do that. Bodhisattva can do that attabhyabadaya, that something that causes harm to you, in order to neva parabhyabadaya, for something to the other person. So you see this example where you harm yourself morally, but you try to do something good for the other person. The Mahayana seems to be saying that yes. Okay? But then again, when you look at the Theravada Buddhist literature, I think we saw this last time also, where Buddha says to Venerable Chunda, Attana palipa palipanno parang palipa palipannang uddharissamiti netan thanang vidyati. When you are submerged in the mud, getting someone equally submerged in the mud is impossible for you, because you are already in the mud. How can you save another person who is in the mud? So Buddha says, if you are in the mud, you cannot save another person who is similarly in the mud. The idea is that you come out from the mud and then you try to help the other person. Now if you take this advice by the Buddha, okay, if you are morally wrong, you can't really morally correct another person. That's what it means. If you are not morally developed, you cannot really guide another person for moral development. How to understand this? Now on the one hand, we have the story, a bodhisattva can go to a drinking group of drinking people and himself drinking and try to get the other drinking people out of that. Now these are, I don't know whether we have exactly right answer to these questions, but these are very interesting things. Now here Buddha says, Nevattabhyabhadaya, na parabhyabhadaya, na ubhyabhyabhadaya. I said it is significant. Why it is significant? You have to really, in certain situations, you have to really look at both yourself and other on equal terms. You have to really look at both yourself and other. Now, if you look at both yourself and other in equal terms, how can we say that self-sacrifice is possible. Because if you sacrifice yourself, you are sacrificing your life. Your life is gone. But you can think, if you are to live, if you were to live, you could do more things. But you sacrifice your life, and that is end of your life. You are no more. Right? So, is self-sacrifice in that sense is accepted in Buddhism. You sacrifice your life and you finish off your life for some, of course, higher purpose. So you can see that the answer depends on, what kind of situations. So basically you have to look at atta, para, and then both together. Both yourself and other you put on similar situation. Now this is something very interesting. It could be taken as giving an answer to the issue of self-sacrifice. Because in the Buddhist tradition, we can become sentimental and do lot of sacrifices. But sacrifice has to be done with good judgment. In other words, in the Buddhist ethics, overall Buddhist ethics, there are two very important concepts. Now those important concepts are, one is compassion, the other one is wisdom. So compassion is a karuna, wisdom we say panya. Now, in fact, these two are given in the definition of paramita. Karuna upaya kosala pariggahita. Karuna upaya kosala. Karuna prajna is given as upaya kosala, upaya kaushalya. Now, basically these two things, compassion and wisdom. Now, compassion and wisdom are both needed in a balanced manner. If a person has too much compassion and less wisdom, that person is tend to do more sentimental things, but they can be not very intelligent. You do things sentimentally, but you are not intelligent. Like suppose you feel very bad about a poor person, you give everything you have. Then what happens to you? You become a beggar. But then there, you have to make a balance. So karuna has to be balanced by panya, and panya has to be balanced by karuna. So in other words, karuna and panya have to go together. In one's behavior, one has to be controlled by the other. In the Visuddhimagga, I am sure you are familiar, Visuddhimagga says that if you have too much panya, less karuna, then you become a very cunning person. And then if you have too much karuna, less panya, then you become sentimentally foolish person. Okay. So then two have to go together hand in hand in a balanced manner. So now when you are balancing, when your karuna is balanced by panya and panya is balanced by karuna, you are really looking at both yourself and other as on a similar situation. Actually, this is a very important ethical problem. Some aspects of this we looked at earlier also. We talked about self-interest and this problem earlier in our discussion. But here what I wanted to show you is when we take this whole concept of self-sacrifice, whether it amounts to some kind of suicide. Now, if it is suicide, whether it is accepted by Buddhism. Okay. So here you can see that if you take the overall attitude, we have to really be careful, because as I showed you, in the Mahayana tradition seem to be the emphasis is somewhat different. Okay. So judging by the overall Buddhist attitude to life and death, it appears that suicide is not approved or encouraged in Buddhism. If assisting someone to commit suicide is wrong, as mentioned above, suicide itself cannot be right. But this general rule seems to have exceptions. Now, if we really look at carefully these two issues, euthanasia and suicide, and how do we make decisions on human life of yourself and on the other are important, very important ethical issues in the Buddhist tradition. Okay. Now the euthanasia and suicide are examples of when we talk about biological ethics. We started looking at biological ethics. So in biological ethics, these two considered to be the important things. Now what I try to do in this discussion last week and today, actually look at different aspects of euthanasia and suicide. Now to summarize the discussion so far, euthanasia or mercy killing basically has the problem you are killing somebody. Now we can say that killing is not really accepted because you can't be killing. But on the other hand, how if somebody decides to terminate one's life because the life is useless? Now, for example, very elderly person, he thinks that he cannot live a meaningful life any longer. Then, thinks about terminating the life, maybe not taking any food. Now, that can be in a way slow type of suicide, but that you are taking with right attitudes. Because after all, it is your life. You can make a decision about it. So whether to live or whether to not, whether to continue or not. Now, you can think about what the Buddha did finally. Before his parinirvana, Buddha, Mahaparinibbana Sutta says that Buddha gave up his will to live. Now in Pali we have this term Ayu Sankhara. The term Sutta uses is Ayu Sankhara Vassajana. Ayu Sankhara Vassajana. Ayu Sankhara, life activities. Vassajana means giving up. So the giving up the life activities. Now what is this actually? What is this? Ayu Sankhara Vassajana. What did the really Buddha do there? Giving up the Ayu Sankhara. It is something like, deciding to die. So Buddha says the Tathagata will pass away after 3 months. But it's psychologically. Now, why Buddha did that? The reason is given that Buddha, when the story is connected to the Mara, when Buddha attained enlightenment, Mara comes and says to the Buddha, okay, you attain enlightenment, now you attain parinirvana. Buddha says, no, till my bhikkhu, bhikkhuni, upasaka, upasika, all these 4 groups of people become well versed in the Dhamma, Vinaya, Dhammadhara, Dhammanudhamma Patipanna, and so on. So when all the 4 groups become well versed in the Dhamma, in the practice, then only I attain parinirvana. Then finally again the story says that Mara appeared when Buddha was 80 years old and said that, okay, now your bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, upasakas and upasikas are well versed in the Dhamma. So now you attain parinirvana. And the story says that they accepted this request. And then Buddha decided, okay, I will attain parinirvana. Now, the interesting thing is, this concept Ayu Sankhara Vassajana seems to be that you think that, okay, you lived your life, you did what you need to do, now it is okay for me to go. So it is the giving up of, we can't say Buddha had the desire to live, but of course there is a will to live. So you give up that will to live because for the reason is that Buddha accomplished his task. Okay. Now that shows that we can make a decision about, if we really, become old and not really abruptly terminate in the life. And then if you feel that, this life is enough, and then you lived the life and you did what you need to do, and then, you let your life go. But this suicide thing, terminating your life on purposefully, it is not a suicide. It is really deciding that, okay, now your life can go. Because we don't have one single incident where any Arahant committing suicide. Because Arahants live till their life go. So not doing anything artificially, but living the life for the sake of others, and also the experience in the happiness of liberation. But Arahants have never committed suicide. Only incidents we have is Godhika and Channa, who became Arahant in the process of committing suicide. But once you become an Arahant has never taken one's own life. So we don't have one single incident. So Arahants live because life has to be, death has to come naturally. So you don't do anything unnatural to keep the life. But unnatural doesn't mean that you don't take medicine. Even Arahants take medicine. These Bojjhanga Suttas were, if you look at the Nidana, were taught by the Buddha to Arahants to alleviate the pain. And when the Buddha was also, when Buddha was physically ill, the monks come in and, the chanting Bojjhanga. So you can see that the artificial doesn't mean taking medicine. But artificial means, you go beyond certain point. Your body cannot naturally hold on. Then of course, if you still try to keep it, then that is not in accordance with Buddhism. The Buddhism cannot agree. But on the other hand, if your body is not into that bad state, if your body can be, resuscitated by medicine, then of course you take medicine. You can recover the illness from medicine. So taking medicine is not really a wrong thing because medicine is natural. Getting sick is also natural. However, when it comes to a certain point, continuing your life unnecessarily is not accepted according to Buddhism. So when you look at Buddha's own life, we can see that when he became 80 years old, when his body was, when he was health was not very good. So finally Buddha decided to attain parinirvana. So the text says to us, describe this as Ayu Sankhara Vassajana, giving up the will to life. So once you give up, then of course naturally the person dies. So this concept of Ayu Sankhara Vassajana is something very important because you need to have, like we need to have Chanda, Chitta, Virya, Vimansa in order to do something. So the same thing for the life. So when we look at from that point of view, we can see that Buddhist attitude to death is, it appears you really do not prolong it unnecessarily, or you do not stop it abruptly either. So both are really two types of extremes. You don't go to any of these extremes and you follow some kind of middle path, some kind of middle path. And another important thing is I said there is no rule against the suicide or about euthanasia. But although these issues seem to be recent, when you read the Vinaya literature, when you read the discourses, there are so many things that are relevant to these modern themes. You may think that Buddha did not talk about euthanasia. Buddha did not talk about suicide directly. So therefore, what can we say? Actually, don't think in that manner. Because when you read the Dhamma carefully, when you read the Vinaya, you can see that there are things that we can extract from Buddhism, use Buddhist teachings in order to answer some of these questions. Okay? Now, in other words, what I am trying to tell you is questions may appear new questions. Problems may appear to be new problems. But if you look at carefully, ultimately all the problems according to Buddhism arise from basic causes, sources, namely Lobha, Dosa, Moha. Now, if it is true that the problems arise from Lobha, Dosa, Moha, then of course Buddhism has an answer to these things. Problems arising from Lobha, Dosa, Moha can appear different from different time periods. But ultimately the root causes of the problems are the same. If the root causes of the problems are the same, then of course we can say that Buddhism has some kind of answer. Although Buddha did not talk about these problems directly. Because some of the problems that we have today were non-existent during the time of the Buddha. But of course, issues related to euthanasia and suicide were there. Because if you look at particularly the Vinaya Pitaka, you can see that the third parajika of Manussa Viggaha has many things associated with that. Okay, so let me wind up today's discussion. So basically, what we discuss is euthanasia and suicide, two forms of death, and what does Buddhism say about it. Now, finally, there is no one correct, hard and fast answer to these questions. But the answer has to be constructed according to the overall philosophy of life and death according to Buddhism. Okay, I think I will wind up from that. Do you have any questions or comments? Anything you want to clarify? Yes, sir. That's an interesting question. His question is, if a person keeps on drinking and then he is seriously ill because of drinking, and the doctor says that don't drink, and if you drink you will die, but the patient keeps on drinking and then dies. Is it a suicide or not? Interesting question. Actually, the two ways to look at. Now, if the person continued drinking, thinking that I want to die from this, then he drank because he wanted to die. Now, then we can say that that's a suicide. But, as you said earlier, if the person drank because he could not control his drinking, because he could not control his mind, even knowingly that he will die, but he wanted to control, but he cannot. Now, if that is the case, then it is not a suicide. Clear? Because he is drinking simply because he can't control. I mean, if he could control, he will control, but he can't control, so he keeps on drinking and knowing that I will die. But even if you know it, it is not an intention. Venerable, there is a distinction between your knowledge and your intention. I mean, we have the knowledge. So the drinking person knows that from drinking I will die. But that is knowledge. But if you drink, by this I want to die, then of course it becomes suicide. So this is the subtle difference between the two. Okay. Thank you for the question. Yes.
Someone said that the death is both great, more than death, faith, surviving, progress, and happiness. At that time, the sick person died. In this case, the cigar fall or not? The cigar fall or not?
How did he die? I didn't get your first part of the question. Can anybody help me?
Someone said the death is good, great,
Okay.
more than
Living, yeah, right.
faith, surviving, progress, and happiness. At the time, the Siddhartha died. In this case, the speaker is wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Your question is, if somebody praises death, saying that this death is good and your life is suffering, whether it's actually that comes in the Vinaya directly. In the Vinaya, this idea that marana vannangva sangvanneya. If you praise death, saying that in your case, it is dying is better than living. Now, if that person then do something to terminate his life, then of course the person who said is guilty. If the person who said that is the Upasampada monk, then he is guilty of Parajika. Because as a result of his inciting this person to die, he dies. But of course in his case, it is something like suicide. Because maybe he doesn't eat well, he doesn't take medicine, so knowingly he causes his death. So for that person, it is suicide, okay? But it is not an abrupt suicide like cutting your throat or something, but it's a kind of slow suicide. For the other person who is praising death and inciting or persuading that person to die, if it is Upasampada monk, he is guilty of Parajika. Of course, if it is not Upasampada monk or ordinary person, but he is still guilty according to Buddhism. But there can be a difference in the law of the country and the Buddhist Vinaya. Maybe praising the death, persuading someone to die may be not a legal crime according to the law. Okay, but Buddhist legal system is different. According to Buddhism, even the person who traces death and in that manner persuades someone to die is also parajika. Okay, Revan. Anything else? Yes. Yeah, it is clearly a suicide. If you go and blast yourself. Now this is called suicide bombers. Like in lot of places, it happens like you the tie a bomb to your body and you somebody detonates it or you switch it on or something, and then of course it is clearly a suicide. Although the idea is different. Now here he is doing because his family will be supported. So you kind of it could, in a way you can say that he sacrificed his life for the sake of family. But there the sacrifice is really a suicide, because suicide is the manner you die, but the purpose is maybe sacrifice. Because looking at the family situation, you think that if you kill yourself, your family will be better off. We can say that you sacrifice your life for the sake of family. So the sacrifice part is okay. But how you wanted to do that was by killing yourself, committing. So it is a suicide, could be also a sacrifice of your life. But if you look at from Vinay point of view, for whatever reason, if you commit suicide, as I said earlier, we don't have a clearly a Vinay rule against it. If we interpret the existing attanang patetabang as a Vinay rule, then still the crime is pachitti, a very small one. Okay. But suppose the people who persuaded him to do this were Upasampada monks, according to Vinaya, they are most likely to be parajika. Okay. But the person is only committing suicide. Actually, these cases related to euthanasia and suicide are very complicated. If any of you want to study more about it, you really look at the Vinita Vattu cases examined in the Vinaya Pitaka, where Buddha gives certain decisions about the things. So you should really do a good study of the Vinita Vattu, the case studies where Buddha the resolve, Buddha pronounced judgment about certain different situations. Anything else?
There is 0.1% to the suicide in front of you. How do you encourage How do you decide?
Well, if someone is committing suicide in front of you, but if you did not encourage that person, then you are not guilty. You know, so it depends on whether you encourage the person to do that, whether he did as a result of that. But you know, if you were not really a part of that, then you are not guilty for it, although the person committed suicide. But of course, if you feel that the person is trying to commit suicide, then you must try to prevent it. Okay? I mean, like anybody will do that. You know, if a person is particularly, you know, trying to commit suicide because of, you know, some kind of psychological problem or some kind of anguish or, you know, the depression or whatever, then, you know, you must not allow that to happen. So your duty is to try to stop it. But, you know, if you can't stop it, then you are not guilty. Okay? Because you are not actively encouraging or discouraging that person. But as a duty, as a good thing, you must try to stop this person and, you know, explain the situation, you know, that he should not commit suicide. Yeah. Okay, I'm sure there can be many other issues also, but you need to think more about these issues. The reason why I discuss this matter in particularly with you is you can see that what the Buddha taught, the Vinaya rules and the Dhamma can be brought into analyze this kind of situations which are not directly sometimes discussed in the Vinaya. So you need to get you know, some kind of practice of doing that. Okay. All right. So thank you very much. We will wind up the discussion for the morning and we will see afternoon.